The story isn't for clicks, it's for learning. Let's understand the pain so we don't repeat the same mistakes.
The clink of a wrench hitting the pegboard was the last sound I heard before the phone in my pocket vibrated. I wiped the dust from my palms, checked the screen. Home. That's how I had her saved, nothing more. Just a home. I answered on speaker, still crouched near the tool chest. Her voice came low, uneven. I'll be late tonight. Don't worry. Then, just behind her, muted but unmistakable, a man's laugh, sharp and relaxed. She hesitated. A breath. I could almost hear her calculating whether I'd caught it. I didn't ask, didn't accuse, just said, "Take your time." Then I ended the call. I stood in that silence for a long second, then turned toward the door. The air in the hallway felt cooler. Inside the bedroom, the closet lights blinked on as I slid open the door. Her suitcase sat under the shelf like it had been waiting for this moment. I reached for it, pulled it free, and laid it on the bed. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. I started with her side of the closet. Blouses, rolled jeans, that maroon dress she wore to his company's holiday party, the one I never got invited to. I folded them neatly. This wasn't revenge, it was clarity and motion. Her jewelry tray sat half full, chaotic. I left it as is and snapped the lid closed. She never noticed when things went missing anyway. I packed the essentials first, and the ones she'd ask about, the rest, I'd box up later. Downstairs, the dog sat by the door, watching me, tail twitching once, twice. I didn't speak to him. He already knew. By the time she'd realized the call went to the wrong person, I'd be done zipping the last compartment. 35 minutes. That's how long it took me to undo 12 years of pretending we were fine, and I still had time to spare. The first time she said she had a late team dinner, it landed wrong. I couldn't explain it, just something in the way she avoided my eyes while zipping up her black boots. But I let it slide. One dinner, then two, then 4 in a month, always with the same vague shrug. You know how Q4 is. That was her line. Then came the gym phase. Out of nowhere. New leggings, new water bottle, her old sports bra suddenly not good enough. She started leaving the house in a rush, hair slicked into a high ponytail, that thin glisten of perfume that didn't smell like anything she'd worn in our 10 years together. "For spin class," she said once, already halfway out the door. The iPad was the first hard shift. It used to stay open on the coffee table, half charged and forgotten. Now it was locked. Same for her laptop, and her phone was always face down, set to vibrate. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask who was texting at 11:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. I just started watching. I checked the cell plan. 3 new numbers showed up, 2 around lunchtime, 1 every night after 9. I pulled the billing history, scanned the charges. Uber, but not from our address. Restaurant tabs with 2 entrees, hotel bars, gift stores she never walked into with me. She had no idea how loud digital silence could be. I didn't explode. I documented quietly. I bought a small notebook, black cover, the kind with no label, wrote down dates, times, and cross-checked them with her stories. Team bonding at bar and brunch didn't match the seafood receipt signed at 10:42 p.m. 3 weeks before the wrong call, I visited the bank, asked to open a private trust account, transferred the joint savings, not all at once, just enough to be ready, left enough in place so she wouldn't notice, just one of those little things you do when you're planning for contingency. I didn't know what day would tip the scale, but I knew it was coming. You don't prep an exit plan if you think the house is safe. What stunned me most wasn't her carelessness. It was how predictable the pattern became once I stopped looking at her through love and started looking through logic. She thought I was sitting in the dark, clinging. She didn't realize I was already packing in my head. She never had patience for apps. "Just set it up for me," she'd said one Saturday afternoon, tossing me her phone like it was a piece of laundry. I remember sitting at the kitchen island, entering her email, picking a password she'd remember, at least in theory. Of course she didn't. A week later she forgot it and never asked again. But I didn't forget. I still had the login saved in my keychain. She assumed it was hers alone. That made it useful. The charges started stacking strange. Boutique candles in bulk, facial packages in a spa she'd never mentioned, dinner reservations made from a zip code 40 miles away. while I was supposedly snoring beside her. She didn't delete anything. That was the part that got me. She just didn't look. The unlocked account sat quietly tracking it all. Every ride, every booking, every lie disguised as a self-care expense. The hotel showed up as Tranquil Falls Wellness, a name too polished to be suspicious, but when I clicked through the link, I recognized the chain, not exactly known for their solitude. I followed the breadcrumb, confirmation email, reservation link, and finally the PDF invoice. 2 guests, 1 king suite, 3 nights. Dates lined up perfectly with the weekend she told me she was off the grid. She came back with a loofah and a detox tea box, smiling like she'd reached nirvana. I nodded, told her she looked rested. I didn't confront her. I printed the invoice and filed it in a manila folder with a small red dot in the corner. The kind of dot you only notice if you're looking for patterns. I'd already started sorting documents that way. Paper trail, timestamp, undeniable. The next morning I booked a storage pod online, not too big, just enough for her clothes, shoes, and whatever lies she wanted to take with her. Scheduled it to arrive the following Friday, mid-morning. I even made sure the HOA wouldn't flag it. Logistics, not emotion. Later that night, she mentioned how much she needed that solo retreat. Said the silence helped her think. I told her I was glad. Said it with a straight face. Even held her hand across the dinner table. She never knew I was counting down the days with the same precision she used to count excuses. She thought she was 2 steps ahead, but the truth was simpler than that. She never once looked back. She called it a phase. I just want to feel a little more independent, she'd said, twirling the keyring to our shared mailbox like it somehow tethered her to a life she no longer admired. I didn't push back, didn't ask what independent meant for a married woman with joint accounts and a shared mortgage. I nodded, supportive, calm, like a man who trusted his wife's restlessness had boundaries. We drove to 6 places. She liked a top-floor condo across town, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern finish, walking distance to a cafe that served oat milk cortados. I could write here, she said, as if she'd ever needed solitude to write before. I offered to help. You're busy, I said. Let me handle the application. She smiled, relieved. What she didn't ask, and what I didn't offer, was whose name the holding company belonged to. It was mine. Set up years ago for a side project I'd never launched. The LLC had no debt, no public listing, and a paper trail so clean it sparkled. We made it look like a gift of trust, but the lease, it was airtight. I reviewed every line with a real estate attorney before filing. Early termination carried a penalty. Unpaid utilities triggered compound interest. Clause 9B was the quiet gem, buried under subheadings, camouflaged in legal language, immediate action authorized upon documented misconduct involving cohabitation, unauthorized guests, or reputational damage to the property holder. She skimmed it, then signed, initialed every page with that breezy loop in her pen stroke. It felt like a performance. She wanted to feel like she'd pulled away, just enough to exhale, but not enough to threaten the life we'd built, or so she thought. The condo became her quiet place. She started spending more time there, between meetings. Her bag started living on the guest bed. She left a toothbrush, then pajamas, then wine glasses. I never asked who she drank with. I made no edits to her fantasy of control, but every time she smiled and said, "It's just mine," I quietly agreed. She didn't know that freedom, when offered by the wrong hand, can come with invisible threads. She believed she was building space. I was constructing structure, tight, binding, legal, and it was almost time to pull the first thread. She must have realized her mistake the second the call ended. Maybe it was the silence on the other end, the lack of questions, no anger, no "who was that?" just a plain, measured "take your time." I think that rattled her more than any accusation could have. She pulled into the driveway exactly 42 minutes later, same blouse as that morning. Hair now tied up like she'd been rushing. Her heels clicked too fast up the steps. I didn't meet her at the door. I didn't have to. I was already sitting in the den, suitcase by the front window, 2 smaller bags near the coat rack. She stepped inside, trying for casual. "Hey, that was weird, wasn't it?" Her voice cracked right at the end. I didn't answer. Just motioned to the dining table. On it, 3 pages of text message screenshots, all printed cleanly, the kind of printout you only get from someone who's been documenting, not guessing. One message sat at the top, outlined in red Sharpie. Tonight. Same room? She didn't move for a second. Then she started to speak, mouth parting like she was about to launch into some story about miscommunication or phone settings or how I was making assumptions. I raised a hand, save it. She froze, no dramatics, no shouting. Just her standing there, suddenly very aware of how quiet the house had become. Even the dog had disappeared upstairs. I picked up a small silver key from the table, set it on the counter beside her purse. You'll need this. She blinked. What's that? The condo, I said. Utilities are in your name now. Lease terms still apply, and I'd check your email tonight. You'll see everything you need. She looked down at the key, then the bags, then at me. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't cold, just done. She expected some kind of emotional warfare, a tearful confrontation, maybe even a thrown glass, but I wasn't interested in giving her that. There was no need to beg for truth when the evidence had already moved into the light. She stepped toward me, slowly. Can we at least talk? We're talking. I turned back to the table, gathered the rest of the papers, and slid them into a folder. Printed dates, time-stamped screenshots, and the terms of Clause 9b, all in order, all ready. She didn't speak again, just stood there for a while, hand still hovering near the key. It wasn't fury she left with, it was something worse. She walked out not knowing which part had undone her, the printed proof, the packed bags, or the fact that I hadn't raised my voice once. It didn't take long for him to insert himself. 2 days, maybe 3. She must have told him some version of the story, how I threw her out, how I was being dramatic, how the lease was just paperwork. He must have believed it right up until the lights cut out in the condo. That's when he reached out. The message came through email, which told me everything I needed to know. No lawyer CC'd, no formal tone, just some half-baked paragraph peppered with words like retaliation and emotional harassment, ending with a veiled threat. If you don't stop this, we'll escalate. He called the lease terms manipulative, called the penalties extortion. My attorney, Margaret, forwarded him the signed agreement that afternoon, 10 pages, her initials in the bottom right corner of every single one, the timestamp from DocuSign, the IP address that confirmed it came from her phone. Clause 9b was highlighted in yellow. Margaret's note was 4 sentences long. Professional, surgical. Please review the executed lease. Enforcement of signed terms does not constitute harassment. Future correspondence should be directed to legal counsel. Utilities were terminated due to unpaid balances, not personal vendetta. No response. The next morning, the water was shut off. Internet followed. 2 days later, a maintenance request was filed for a mold inspection. She must have noticed the condensation building from the broken AC unit. That repair? Delayed. Not out of spite, but because the service fees hadn't cleared. Maintenance policies don't bend just because you shared a bed with someone new. I received no apology, no explanation, but I did see a charge on her old joint credit card. $483 at a home goods store. Probably buying towels and curtains, trying to turn a cracked ceiling into a new beginning. She had told him this place was hers, that she was starting fresh. He hadn't realized she was living inside a structure I'd designed from the foundation up. Freedom looks different when it arrives with an invoice, and when you sign your name beneath it, line by line, it's not a trap. It's a mirror. They wanted to reset. I just enforced what they'd already agreed to. No rage, no threats, just paper, dates, and one quiet clause they never saw coming. Her voice cracked before she even said my name. I knew that sound, like she was trying to cry softly, make it sound restrained, dignified. But it wasn't. It was panic with a gloss of nostalgia. Please, she whispered through the phone, just let it go. We'll leave, okay? No drama. Just let it go. She didn't mention him, didn't say the word sorry, just that repeated plea, let it go. Like this was some mutual misunderstanding, like I'd overreacted to a harmless mistake. Instead of holding her to the contract she signed with both hands and a fresh manicure, I waited for her to ask properly, for her to take responsibility, even gave her the words. You can submit a written request, I said calmly. Our legal contact's listed in your packet. Silence. Then a small exhale, sharp, offended. Are you serious? Yes, she never sent anything. Instead, the next week I received notice from the condo manager. Noise complaints 2 nights in a row. Unauthorized overnight guests. A door slammed so hard it cracked the drywall. She'd left a wine bottle stain across the kitchen quartz. Someone reported shouting. Someone else reported music that didn't stop until 3:14 a.m. Violation after violation, and all while pretending she wanted peace. Margaret and I filed the breach notice the next morning, damage claims, photo evidence, clauses referenced and documented, mailed and emailed. And then I added one more piece. I took the transcript of that accidental phone call, the one where she'd meant to lie to me but forgot to switch screens, the one where his laugh bled into her excuse. I paired it with the text she sent the day before. Tonight, same room. I timestamped it, attached it to the file. Permanent record, not for vengeance, just to anchor the truth somewhere she couldn't rewrite it. She had cried on that call. I don't doubt that, but she didn't cry when she was unzipping her overnight bag or pouring wine for someone else in the kitchen I signed for. She remembered what she'd done. She just didn't expect me to. And she certainly didn't expect me to file it. Jason always floated somewhere in the middle. He wasn't close enough to take sides, but not distant enough to stay out of it. And we'd known him and his wife since our second year in the house. They were the kind of couple who hosted wine nights, texted photos of their grill setups, shared vacation rentals. Neutral ground. So when his message came through, I wasn't surprised, just disappointed. She's painting you as bitter, he wrote. Says you're trying to ruin her financially, that you can't let go. I didn't bother typing a full response, just 2 words. Clause 9b. It took him 5 minutes to reply. When he finally did, it was short. She's been quiet since. I never asked what he forwarded. I didn't need to. That clause did exactly what it was designed to do. Shut down speculation with specifics, no drama, no accusations, just language she'd read and initialed and signed without reading it twice. After that, the group chat went quiet. No more casual invites, no more Instagram tags from her at girls' night. She stopped posting altogether for a while, then came back with filtered sunset stories and vague quotes about healing and reclaiming joy. But the people who knew, they didn't bite. They remembered who had helped her move into that condo, who had celebrated her fresh start without knowing I'd prepaid the first month as part of a shell agreement. They remembered the brunch where she laughed a little too hard at someone else's joke while I paid the check. Her new narrative about the cruel, controlling ex who weaponized paperwork sounded convincing to strangers, but not to those who'd seen the lead-up, not to those who'd seen me calmly pass her the keys and say nothing more. Silence has a different weight when it's backed by documentation. The more she tried to spin the story, the tighter it wound around her, and eventually, even Jason stopped trying to find middle ground. Because truth doesn't need defense, it just waits quietly until the noise burns out. She thought she could bury the facts beneath performance, but it's hard to perform when the lights go off and the lease has your signature at the bottom. She always loved the spotlight. Even before things went sideways, she curated her life like a gallery wall, filtered brunch photos, cryptic captions, carefully timed selfies that made it look like spontaneity just followed her around. When we were still married, I used to smile and double tap, even if I wasn't in the frame. After all, that's what support looked like, right? But after the move to the condo, after the phone call, after the silence, her tone shifted. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. The captions started doing the work for her. Some people never let go. She posted with a shot of her walking away from the camera on some random trail. A quote card followed a day later. Freedom comes with a price. Pay it anyway. Friends commented at first, those on the fringe, the ones who never asked for details. Heart emojis. You're so strong. Glad you're finding your peace. But the responses didn't multiply. They thinned, then trickled, then stopped. People noticed more than they admit. They saw her stories without watching them to the end. They saw the way she'd answer herself in comments, the way she tagged places she wasn't actually in, and then the untagging started. Posts with her and the friend group disappeared, photos from last Christmas gone, like she thought erasing the past would somehow undo the signature on the lease. I checked her account once, not to feed any curiosity, just to track fallout. The follower count had dropped. The ones who stayed, mostly inactive profiles. Except one, it was obvious. An account with no profile picture, no posts, and a name that looked like a keyboard sneeze. But he liked every new upload within seconds. Left emojis like someone trying too hard to prove loyalty in public. Her new boyfriend, or at least the one she'd risked everything for, the only one still clapping when the performance turned hollow. I didn't comment, didn't counterpost, and didn't send links or explanations to the people drifting away from her orbit. I didn't need to. You can't win the court of public opinion when there's no jury left to clap. She'd built a story expecting applause, but a spotlight is no comfort when you're standing in it alone. The knock came just after noon. 2 short raps, firm and impersonal. I opened the door to find a courier in a windbreaker, clipboard in hand, envelope extended like it weighed nothing. He didn't say much, just asked for a signature and handed it over. Then he was gone before I'd even shut the door. I didn't rush to open it, set it on the counter first, made coffee. Sat in the stillness of the kitchen she used to call too quiet, like peace was a flaw that needed filling. Only when the mug was warm in my hands did I peel the envelope open. A check, full amount, dated 3 days prior, covering the lease penalties, the utility back payments, the damage fees, even included the late charges down to the cent. No note, no return address, just money, cold and mechanical. The final act of someone who once told me love wasn't transactional. I read the check twice, not for disbelief, just to register that she'd finally stopped resisting and started complying. I picked up my phone and texted Margaret. Received, moved to close file. No exclamation point, no bitterness. Then I stood, walked to the study, and opened the file cabinet. Top drawer, far left folder. Label read, next tenant. Inside, the revised lease, updated terms, security deposit instructions, and a blank welcome letter, the kind I prepared long before any of this started, before her independence, before the retreat lie, before the muffled laugh behind a shaky voice on the wrong phone call. Some people plan for fights. I planned for exits. The condo would be cleaned within the week, repairs already scheduled, keys ready for handoff. By month's end, the place would hold no trace of her voice, her perfume, or her curated quotes about freedom. She thought I'd battle this, thought I'd spiral, chase, lash out. She never understood. I wasn't trying to win. I was simply concluding. And peace doesn't ask for applause. It just arrives, quiet and final.